Good morning, afternoon, evening, and new year. Woo! Welcome back to the Liberal Artist Podcast. I am your host, Bodio and with me I have Andy Gibby Gibson.
I get to be first on the list this time, and also last on the list like usual during our introductions.
Our other lovely co-host, Kaylie Horowitz, is on a European excursion, so that means the boys get to be nerds.
The boys get to be nerds once more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we get to do dumb shit. We get to talk about Adult Swim cartoons like Boys.
Coming back at you with the stuff that Kaylie's not interested in, yeah.
Or at least the stuff that Kaylie would have to force herself to watch 60 hours worth of content just to be able to keep up.
We've already bullied her into watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I feel like doing that with more stuff would be kind of mean.
We've got her on one thing, and that's pretty easy to just be like, all right, you've watched one thing, keep going with just the same thing, but weirder as she progresses through all of the JoJo arcs and everything.
Right.
If we tried to take her into the deep end of the pool during Adult Swim like we are today, she might get drowned in all of the weirdness that exists.
Yeah, it sounds like an awful time, because I know I have an awful time in most of Adult Swim, but that's a different subject. Topic, Jesus.
The topject. It's the Webster's word of 2023.
Yeah, because we could just make up words, and then Webster's like, yeah, sure, fine. That one. Love us, please.
Honestly, I think you would be less angry about topject being the top word of 2023 than you were about goblin mode.
Yeah, no, that one was... I'm so frustrated. First off, it's not a word, it's two words.
It's two words.
Second off, just... No, what?
I get it, and I understand the vibes, and there's a part of me that agrees with it, but I just don't think it's right to put a two-word phrase as the word of the year. But all these dictionaries are just like, would you like to see us dab, children?
Right.
We made the laugh cry emoji the word of the year. Right. Because that's how words work.
Hey, what? You stopped using that 2 years ago? Please love us. Please pay attention to us.
It's finally our time. Ya yeet. Yeet skirt. Yes, children. Love us. Love us all the same.
You got any New Year's resolutions, bud?
You know, I was thinking about that earlier, and then I went, I'm perfect, so I'm already good to go. Nah, I don't normally make New Year's resolutions because people always aim like super high and ridiculous with them and give up by like, I don't know, hour 26 of the new year or so. But I think I could set realistic things for myself that I want to do, such as if I'm in the gym, I would like to, by the end of the year, do a 1 rep max bench press with 2 plates on each side.
Nice.
I think I'm already pretty close to there.
Nice.
Like, so it's a reasonable goal to work towards.
Right.
It's not like I'm trying to be Mr. Olympia or anything. And if it's something I already enjoy doing, I'm probably not going to give up on it.
Right. Something you already started pursuing. That's a good idea, man.
Exactly. What about you?
No, I actually am perfect, so nothing.
Well, yeah, we knew this. I just wanted to open the floor.
Yeah, no, I want to do more, gain more skills.
Okay.
Not because like I feel like I'm lacking, but just because I'm in the position where here's our liberal artist podcast heart to heart moment. I turned 30 this year in a couple weeks, actually. And I'm at the point to where I'm no longer a young adult. I'm just an adult. And then in 20 years, I'll be an old man. So I'm like, oh, shit. Right.
Considering the way that you actually take care of yourself, like, I think you'll probably be fine.
Oh, sure.
Like, a little while longer.
Sure, but I've always kind of just like coasted and never really like dedicated myself to one thing. I've kind of just like let things happen, and I'm lucky enough to where it always works out. Mostly works out.
Yeah.
So I actually want to like try and dedicate myself to some things, some small things.
So what skills are we talking here? Are we talking like you're gonna be the new like a leather worker in the village?
Fuck
and
that.
like,
I bought a
not like a new trade or anything.
No. I bought a bass guitar like at the beginning of COVID. And I was trying to learn for like a month, and then I got busy at work because that was fun.
You came over from the treble clef to the cool
clef.
Yeah,
I've had this bass sitting in my apartments for over 2 years now, and I'm like, let me just actually learn how to use this thing as opposed to having it be set dressing, right?
All right.
So that's one that I'm thinking about.
How exciting!
It'll be fun.
That's really fun. I mean, like, I can teach you more about bass guitar. You can teach me more about lifting, and Kaylie can learn whatever she wants, I guess.
Yeah. But let's do a little pivot, a little transition.
Yeah.
To our big boy topic. Let's talk Venture Brothers, man.
Yay!
Gibby and I were talking, brainstorming, thinking about, man, what do we talk about? We can't do wrestling again because that's always the first thing we say when it's you and me. It's like, well, we can't just talk about wrestling again.
Well, in fairness, that's kind of what like re-sparked our friendship. Like that's after, true. You know, you graduated high school and left me behind in public school and went on your journey. Us being back at the library, being able to talk wrestling and be like, hey, we should base a friendship on this.
Yeah, we worked at the Auburn University Library together for like, what, 2 years, 3 years?
The greatest library in all. I don't actually have like the award for that, but it was any job where you don't work that hard is a good job.
That was sweet. It was a fun job, and we met a ton of cool people.
But we done it. We done the wrestling.
We've done the wrestling. Maybe later this year, okay, for part 2. But
maybe we can report live from WrestleMania or something.
It is in LA this year.
Hey, how about that?
But we were talking, brainstorming. We were like, oh, we also nerd out about Venture Brothers. So we're going into that. I think specifically we want to talk about how Venture Bros kind of is its own thing in the world of, I hate using this phrase because it sounds like I'm talking about hentai or porn or something, but like adult cartoons, right? Namely stuff like your Simpsons, your Family Guy, Bob's Burgers, South Park, things like that.
Which, you know, all have their place. And by all have their place, I mean like at 7 o'clock on Adult Swim as the opener, where it's like, all right, we're moving from the kiddie pool over to the adult stuff, but it's not the adultiest adult stuff.
This is the stuff you recognize, so we can do the weird shit at like 11 p.m.
Exactly. So we can get real strange when 3 a.m. rolls around and you're still watching for some
Venture
reason.
Bros is the 11:30. Right before midnight, before you get into the real experimental, I don't know if I like this part of Adult Swim.
Yeah, that's the part of Adult Swim that my dad accidentally catches when he's traveling through time zones and wakes up at 4 a.m.
Yeah. And
he texts me to ask, what the hell is Xavier Renegade Angel?
Yeah.
What's happening right now? But let's give the people who may not be in the loop a little bit of info about this glorious show that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So, in essence, the Venture Bros is or at least started as a parody of the 1960s and 70s adventure cartoons like Johnny Quest. It's essentially a show that asks, with all the danger that these children are put in, how are the main characters still alive after 2 episodes or so? And it takes that question and crafts an entire world and economy around not just the boy adventurers, but also all the marketing around them and all of the bureaucracy of essentially the superhero, the Secret Service, the secret American government, everything like that gets wrapped up into one universe.
There's also a big component of it is what happens when these boy adventures of the 60s are now adults and not young adults like men past their prime trying to get over the traumas of their childhood and such.
Exactly. About 20 years past being smooth and in their 20s, and about 30 years past being recognizable from a lunchbox. The show originally came out in 2003, and it's an oddity in that it came out in 2003, stopped production of episodes in 2018, and there were only 7 seasons in total with all of that.
They got this shit on a drip, on a very slight drip.
Every 3 years, you're just like, please, Sam, may I have some more?
And Doc Hammer's like, maybe. I'll think about it.
The creators, Doc Hammer and Jackson Public, as well as a large team of talented animators and writers, directors, and voice actors, essentially were proof that quantity is better than quality, because despite the fact that there's only it seems that my malpropisms have not been left behind in 2022.
We're still adjusting to 2023.
Yeah, I'm still emotionally recovering from 2019, man. Like I'm not there yet. But anyways, quality over quantity. Most of the seasons range from 6 to 12-ish episodes or so. Once in a while, you get a 15-episode season, and it tastes like manna from heaven.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, so good. But apparently, there is a movie coming along the way that hopefully will be able to wrap things up.
Please.
The show is based around one Dr. Thaddeus Rusty Venture, who is far less cool than his name would leave you to believe. He wears polyester speed suits from the 1970s.
That's a onesie for most of us here.
Yep. It's a romper for super scientists, which he considers himself to be. Not just a regular old biologist or botanist, but the kind of guy that makes things like sci-fi monsters, the walking eye, giant guard robots, city melting death rays, without realizing that that's kind of a mad scientist thing to do.
Right.
He thinks he's the next great protagonist of super science and leading the world, despite the fact that his family's fortune was all earned by his globe-trotting dad, and he has no game. He has, as they say in Elden Ring, maidenless.
0 game, no maidens, awful credit score.
And somehow ended up with 2 teenage boys.
Yes.
His sons, Hank and Dean Venture. The other 2 principal characters that I'll name right now are Brock Sampson, who is pretty much the manliest man that ever manned, who is acting as his bodyguard on behalf of one of the secret organizations, and his arch nemesis, the Monarch, who is a professional grade villain, has an entire flying fortress full of henchmen, a beautiful sidekick who is far more competent than he ever will be, and yet cannot beat the putziest putz that ever putzed. It's pretty remarkable.
That's a good word. That's a good word. I like that word.
Yep. He is he's a bit of a schlub, as they might say.
Yeah.
But I guess that just means that they're perfect for each other.
Yeah. So I think we should talk about Venture Bros as it stands alone, and then we can branch out to as how it compares to other shows that it not only like grew up with, but also, I don't know if compete against is the right phrase, but that's the one we're going to use. Compete against.
Yeah. Rubbing elbows with all the Rick and Mortys and the Aqua Teen Hunger Forces of the world.
Yeah.
The things that people fear when we say we're going to talk about Adult Swim, because that brings a certain connotation of style along with it.
Usually not good.
Usually intended for 19-year-olds who just smoked a bowl that they made out of like a Gatorade bottle.
One use only. No, so but Venture Bros very much so started like that, right? It started as one of those back in if you're old enough, I guess is the right phrase to say, old enough to remember back in the early Adult Swim days. You know, I was 10, not old enough to watch that stuff, but definitely watching it anyway.
Absolutely.
It was very much so in the same vein of this is flash animated, really crude jokes, referencing stuff, cartoons from like the 70s and 80s, right? You have like
precisely
your first season of Venture Brothers, your first couple seasons of Aqua Teen Hunger Force,
C Lab
2021, Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, home movies, stuff like that, right?
Stuff that was very much made for an older, probably stoned audience.
Because this was the early days, right? Adult Swim was kind of the products they were making weren't necessarily a new topic, but definitely making this is the only kind of content we produce, right? These are the only kind of shows that we produce.
Cheap to make, hodgepodge.
Right, a little improv-y, definitely geared towards your 18 to 32 dude demographic.
Low budget,
right? Because Cartoon Network was taking a gamble. They had this weird block basically after 8 p.m. on weekdays that they never really figured out what to do with. And some goons raised their hands. It was like, we know how to work Flash. We can make some stuff real quick.
We got some old shitty Hanna-Barbera cartoons that have never been used before. Right. You want to do something with that?
Right. And because it spawned in that era, I know when I tell people about Venture Brothers, my first comment is usually, you can skip the first season.
As is tradition with every TV show known to man.
Right. I don't think the first season is good. And I don't think it's really indicative of what the show grows into being, right?
I think you're definitely right in that the titular Venture Brothers of Hank and Dean in the first season are basically just used as a prop. In essence, they are the stand-ins for the Johnny Quests of the world. They are the golly gee and gee willikers sort of kids, as if you took Leave It to Beaver, the Cleaver family, and just put them into Adult Swim's kind of cynical and crude world, that sort of thing. And they see Brock Sampson beating a man to death to remove the ancient mummy curse from him, and they're just like, give him the old one too, Brock.
So Hank and Dean, especially in that first season, are supposed to parody, not even portray, but parody like the happy-go-lucky Johnny Quest-esque child adventure, even though they're both 17 and just acting like goobers.
They're too old for it, and also they've been somehow sheltered and shown the entire world.
Yeah, they're extremely ignorant in spite of all the stuff they've experienced, right?
They get to go all over the world. They've been everywhere from California to Cambodia, usually strung along as some sort of scam part of Dr. Venture's new way to make money, despite the fact that they've been to space and they've been to the hidden temples and lost jungles and everything. They go to homeschool inside learning beds that show them videos, educational videos from the 1960s made by their grandpa on their school curriculum. They know nothing. And so like they don't realize how hard it is for them to relate to everybody else their age.
Mm-hmm. Or just everybody else in general, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You also have Dr. Venture, who's kind of irredeemable in the first season.
Yes. Yeah.
He is unapologetic in his incompetence, right? He has no real defining values. He has seemingly no motivation outside of, well, I've always done this and I'm trying to get paid, right?
Yeah. He's very much what I've seen him compared to is not just the has-been, but like the has-been child actor as well.
Yeah.
Because in the universe, alongside all of his real life adventures that he went on with his dad and his dad's whole team of super people, adventurers, scientists, your typical 60s Avenger-ish loadout.
Effectively, what if the Justice League also did Scooby-Doo mysteries?
Exactly. They also in universe made a TV show about him when he was 9,
about their adventures with Rusty as the quote unquote protagonist.
The only lasting impact he's had on the world is his fame as a 9-year-old, and occasionally when he fucks up as an adult.
A 9-year-old cartoon character.
Yeah, he doesn't even remember what's real and what isn't.
Yes. And then you have season 1 Brock, who's just a crazy person.
Yeah, Brock is very much in season 1 there to kill anybody that threatens the family. We're not really given an explanation as why he's taking orders from the lowest of the low, from this schmuck Dr. Venture, but he's there and he is basically just a force of nature.
The real life reasons for Brock's forced character development is some of my favorite Venture Brothers lore.
That is some good stuff.
Yeah, so for our audience, Brock Sampson is almost 1-to-1 based on the WCW pro wrestler Sid Vicious. Haha, we brought it back to wrestling, baby.
We did it. We did it. Psycho Sid in the building.
Sid Vicious. And WWE at the time was like, hey, we see that you copied Sid. This guy's a crazy person. Stop or we'll sue you. So, instead of getting rid of the character, they did the actually correct decision and just like, hey, let's make him an actual person.
Yeah. You definitely see that a little bit more as the season goes on, but especially after that, they do, I think, a fantastic job in giving this essentially perfect killing machine a strong arc and a strong role in kind of a soft role.
Yeah.
Which I think we can talk about in a minute here, because I have one note about season 1 and then want to move on from it, because I think that's when the show really blossoms. Yeah. Season 1 kind of stays at that level for the rest of it until the final episode of season 1, in which some of the henchmen of the Monarch randomly run into Hank and Dean as they are riding off into the sunset on season 1 and kill them.
Yeah, they just straight up die, and that's how it ends.
The Venture Brothers die at the end of season 1.
The titular characters die at the end of season 1.
Yes, they do. And season 2 opens with Rusty going on a bender in grief at the death of his sons, and Brock having to track him down.
In a musical montage.
Yes. And then their neighbor, who is a high-level necromancer, sorcerer, sweet man named Dr. Orpheus. Don't ask questions. We're past season 1 at this point. Says, how are you doing? This grief must be killer for you. And Rusty says, oh, it's fine, actually. The boys are clones. We're going to whip them up in the lab real quick. Don't tell them. It's still them. This has happened like a dozen times.
And so cold open at the top of season 2, that's when we really start to see them work at, okay, we have these goofy, wacky, stupid characters. Let's make them people, right? Because all these questions you have from the first season, how have Hank and Dean not died yet? The answer is, well, they have a lot.
A lot.
They've died several times.
And it's happened so often that it's treated as normal for anybody who's close to it. We find out in a later flashback in the series that Rusty's been working on this cloning operation since day one that Brock showed up as his bodyguard.
Yeah, basically, it's always been that way.
Yeah, it's always been this way. So it's not fucked up because,
well, it is,
it's
but
just
everybody's
what we do.
The people who know have adjusted.
Exactly. It actually is really, really fucked up, and it really messes with people later on.
Yeah.
It messes with Orpheus in the moment. And once the boys actually find out they're clones, about 3-ish seasons later or so, it emotionally destroys Dean. And we see a split between essentially two characters that served the exact same purpose, with Hank and Dean get to grow apart and become individuals. Because we see that the revelation that they're actually clones and they've died 1,000 times, but because of the ending of season 3, the cloning facility has blown up and they no longer are immortal beings in essence.
So these are the Omega Hank and Dean. They are the last Hank and Dean at this point.
They realize that not only was it fucked up that they were clones, but it's also fucked up that they lost all of their infinite life cheat codes there. And Dean takes it really hard. The difference, I'd say, overall with Hank and Dean across 7 seasons is that Dean is a really dynamic character, where Hank is the most static character that could possibly exist.
I think in terms of personality, Hank is very static, but not in terms of motivation. I see it as Dean feels like he needs to grow up to be like Rusty, whereas Hank desperately wants to grow up to be like Brock.
It is interesting because Brock goes from killing machine to essentially not only paternal, but also kind of maternal in his influence. Steak Bentley on YouTube really revealed this to
Very
me.
good video.
Watching his retrospective on the series, where he says that not only do you get to see Brock kind of be a dad and teach the boys, how to be tough or how to survive, and how to dress up, go on a date, things like that. You get to see him like teaching them kind of the softer side of life as well. Two things that Rusty is not very good at doing, because Rusty's definition of parenting is projecting all of his failed dreams onto one of his sons in Dean, but not both.
And what's interesting about on top of Brock and Rusty's relationship growing, not like they're romantic or anything, but Brock does Brock does counter Rusty in parenting style, right? Whereas Rusty tries his damnedest to be very firm and let the boys force them into the same situation he is. Brock kind of eventually takes some more caring. Here's how you go on date. As you said, here's how you go on dates. Here's how you defend yourself. You could borrow my car, take these 2 girls out, right? We learn Rusty is the way he is because his dad was an evil person and did the same thing to him. The only counterpoint is Rusty's dad, the original Dr. Venture, was very good at it and was very successful in his time. Everything worked out for him because of how shitty of a person he was.
Not only that, like extremely charming.
Yeah, a stupid charisma apparently.
Ugh.
You also see Rusty not only through flashbacks, you relive his traumas and all the terrible stuff. You hear him talk about it. You hear him talk about the saddest thing is he's messed up and he knows he's messed up, but he's still trying his hardest, which turns this creepy dude who comes on to every set of boobs he meets into, oh, dude, you're just trying really hard to be your dad, even though you know you're not supposed to. You can't stop, right?
Yeah, like this is what you know. You know, when you were talking about it and breaking it down like that, what I realized is Rusty didn't have a Brock.
No, he never
I think
did.
is one of the big things. Rusty essentially was the only child of a single parent who was much more focused on being a celebrity than being a parent. And Dr. Venture was both James Bond and Albert Einstein and Tony Stark all at the same time. Everybody loved him. He made billions of dollars. He made incredible contributions to humanity, but none of it was for really the good of other people. No. It was all for his own glorification. And all of the adults that Rusty was surrounded with the original Team Venture were essentially fucked up people. Yeah. And I keep using that word and should definitely give a little variety, but it's probably the best because you had the sociopathic,
action.
Probably on probably on amphetamines action man. You had Colonel Gentleman, who was just the biggest sleaze of anybody. You had, I don't know, the Last Atlantean. He was fine. He was a nice guy.
Yeah, Kano, but Kano had his own. Kano was probably the closest thing he had, but there's a bunch of drama associated with Kano as well, right?
Yeah, a silent giant sumo man. Like, it wasn't really going to be that great for any kid growing up with that whole crew. Rusty essentially never had a chance, and I think he realizes that, but he still feels like everybody should like him because he carries on the Venture name. Yeah, and in his own way, he's trying to be moral and he's trying to help humanity and get the credit that he deserves for helping humanity. Damn it! And
on top of the development these characters get, they also do a fantastic and amazing job of building a world around these guys, right? And a world where Saturday morning cartoon villains are a real thing. Why wouldn't they unionize and try to have a normal job? Or trying to have a normal job and a quote unquote normal life, which Venture Brothers says they do, and they have been.
Yeah, it's cool that the show moved from like just super science and adventure to like organized villainy. And not only that, I really appreciate that it's been a thing for a long time in the universe. Yeah. The original bureaucracy of super people, of the Guild
of Calamitous Intent.
Even before it was the Guild of Calamitous Intent, when they had the original guild of Colonel Venture, the boy's great grandfather.
We're going deep into the lore on this one.
Yeah, I love that they essentially established one big organization for the betterment of humanity, and they had guys like Circus Strongmen and Oscar Wilde, who were debating the fate of humanity. And you see later on that splinters into essentially the protagonists, which is all the G.I. Joe weirdos.
Because the government also has a secret organization to manage these psychos with doomsday lasers who have unionized and organized themselves.
The Office of Secret Intelligence. They are kind of working for the better of No, they're working for the U.S. government.
They're working for the U.S. government. They are also psycho cartoon characters.
They're psycho weirdos.
But they're soldiers.
And they get matched up against the Guild of Calamitous Intent, which is the union for antagonists. They don't like the term bad guy.
Yes.
It's offensive to them.
They use protagonists and antagonists. And hench. And two hench.
Yeah, and hench.
Yes.
Henches serve antagonists. Yes. But the Guild of Calamitous Intent, essentially, it's kind of like an insurance company for guys who want to blow up city blocks, but not like kill a bunch of people. You know, they just happen to, you know, want to level and be like, behold my destruction, I am mighty.
I'm gonna move it on because I did not like what you just said. But we've talked a lot about
where am I wrong?
We've talked about, you're not, and that's why I'm frustrated. We've talked about how they picked up the strings of what they established in the first season, and they do all of that and continue to do it starting in season 2. We also can talk about how, or need to rather, before we move on to the other part of our conversation, how there's no wasted movement in Venture Brothers. Like the second they pick up all the scraps and say, okay, all of these are a nice bow, now we can leave thread lines. Characters who get nixed on screen in season 3 come back and are pivotal plot points in season 7. All right. Everything that happens has a reason.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
We don't want to get too deep into spoiler territory because you all should go watch Venture Brothers.
This is true. Characters like not only go when they need to and come back when they need to. One of the most respectable things about the Venture Brothers writing in general is that you don't see characters overstay their welcome.
Yes.
For the most part. When they decide that we need to return to status quo or we need to evolve and move on, they are not afraid to kill a character off to keep progressing the story. It often happens, you know, with season finales. You'll see somebody try to get a little bit too much power, and if the OSI or the guild are not big enough to remove that power and return to status quo, there's usually the highest of the high guys like the Master, who are from like the Shadow Dimension, or Dr. Henry Killinger, who is just
he's a dude.
Mary Poppins on the business level.
He's Henry Kissinger as an eldritch being.
Yeah, you see, essentially, they return things to the normal level, or whatever normal really is for the Venture Brothers. I think you're absolutely right in that they don't waste time. Usually, even if there's a filler episode, there's details that are revealed.
Yeah, they put in something
important,
right? That may not be important for the overall plot, but it's like, oh, that's why that works that way.
Exactly, and I think that it's really smart the way that they pull everything together. Like, I can only imagine watching this show in 2006 and asking questions about certain things and then going, you mean I'm going to have to wait till 2018 to get an answer on this?
Yeah, good luck, idiot.
Are you kidding me? But it's a show that it doesn't show all of its cards at the same time. But when it needs to play a trump card, it will absolutely do it. And it has satisfying payoff. That's the amazing thing about it. Like, there are so many questions, like, why does the Monarch hate Rusty? Why would Brock Sampson ever spend so much time around this dork? What the hell is Venturion? What does that matter to any of this? And it's a show that, given the time and given, audience patience, it will satisfy those questions. Even in the last seconds of the duration of the show before it got canceled, God damn it, they left it on the biggest cliffhanger of all time.
Please give us the movie.
Not even a cliffhanger. It wasn't a cliffhanger. It was a reveal.
Please give us the movie. I need, I desire.
We need the movie.
I need this movie more than I need to play Street Fighter 6 with Jamie Lee Curtis.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's big.
That's a lot.
I'll give you that.
Yeah.
So I think we've covered like a lot of what the Venture Brothers is. Before we compare it to the things that it isn't, I do want to note that we kind of talk about the Venture Brothers as if it's an extremely serious adult cartoon.
It's not.
That it's extremely silly at the same time. It just, you don't realize all of the cleverness that goes into it and all of the heart that goes into it. Like at the same time that you'll see, you know, all of the silly, goofy stuff, like with Billy Quizboy and Pete White, and all of the gag villains that they come up with for like the entry level bureaucrats, like Brick Frog, the greatest villain of all
He's just
time.
a guy dressed as a frog and he throws bricks at people. That's all he does.
There's still time for all of the silliness there. Like, we know how silly the Spanakopita episode is, or how ridiculous they get even with the introduction of characters like Jonas Jr. and everything. Like, you just don't realize the first time you watch it, like how well crafted everything is. It is a comedy, but it isn't.
My favorite moment, not my favorite, but one of my favorite moments from Venture Brothers is when Colonel Masters finds out he has heart cancer, so he freezes himself and rockets himself out into space so that aliens can find his body and fix it via instructions on a sticky note attached to his chest.
What's even better is that it's not heart cancer. He's got pee cancer.
Yeah, you're right.
Not only does he think that, not only does he have like prostate cancer and everything, he also thinks that he's a Hulk because he faints because his heart starts going too fast. And the entire OSI has dedicated themselves to a lie and to gaslighting their leader into thinking that he's a Hulk and that he hulks out and loses consciousness.
But he gets too excited. It's beautiful.
And he does get to be a Hulk. He gets to be a Hulk at a really
he does
pivotal
get to be
moment.
A Hulk in the end.
Because of all the gamma radiation in space when he gets unthawed from being shot into space. It's incredible. General Traster rules.
Yeah. But let's talk about, so what do you think differentiates Venture Brothers from the rest of the cartoons in the same genre that it's in?
I think, like we said earlier, it starts out pretty similar. And I think that goes along with what happens with the writers we're talking about when you write comedy as a young person, in that everything sucks and everybody is sad and falls on their face all the time, and that's what they focus on.
The Rick and Morty mentality.
Yeah. And the creators definitely have talked about how the show in some ways is about failure. Like, Dr. Venture is a fail son. He's riding the coattails of his dad, who's been dead for like 30 years or so. He's a dork and nobody respects him. And nobody even respects his main rival. His villain is still a dork as well, just in a butterfly costume. But I think what really brings me back to it is, as the show progresses, compared to a lot of other shows in not just Adult Swim, but the adult animation genre and medium, is that the characters grow to like each other. We talked about this previously, where it was just like, Brock likes the boys like each other, the boys love their dad in a weird, traumatic way of just like, boy, sure is strange that we all went through this weird boy adventurer lifestyle, huh? I guess that's relatable for us at least. But not only that, the monarch gets to be friends with his henchmen. He gets to marry his number two.
We haven't even talked about the character development of the
so
monarch.
Much shit to cover.
And
there's so much shit to cover.
Dr. Girlfriend / Dr. Mrs. the Monarch.
Dr. Mrs. the Monarch, Henchman 21, essentially a gaggle of Team Rocket goons that come around to be some of the best characters on the show.
100%.
And they move from the story's antagonist to their secondary protagonists. Yeah. It's really cool to see how it happens. And I don't think there's a ton of shows on Adult Swim or like Family Guy or South Park where people are just like, hey man, we fight a lot, but at the end of the day, I still love you and I still care about you. And I can talk all the shit I want about you, but if anybody says anything about you, I'm going to laser them off the face of the earth.
I think what this show does very well, outside of other adult cartoons, is for the most part, right? Other cartoons are episodic, right? They're sitcoms. Yeah. They're sitcoms, but they're animated, right? Stuff that happens on The Simpsons this week doesn't necessarily control what happens on The Simpsons next week, right?
And it's treated as out of the ordinary if anybody brings anything up.
Right.
Like, did you ever see the episode of The Simpsons, Homer's Enemy, where this one guy comes and shakes up the status quo because he just remembers the things that Homer has done?
No.
He's just like, you went to space? Your son owns a factory? You've met 7 different presidents?
Yeah.
What's wrong with you people?
Yeah, and that's the other thing I was going to say, right? It's like the characters on top of, right, even though it does feel episodic, right? Stuff that happened in last week's episode may not relate to what's in this week's episode, but the stuff that happened in last week's episode did happen, and it will probably come up. As on top of that, time is allowed to pass, right?
Yeah.
At the beginning of the show, Hank and Dean, I said 17 earlier, they're 16, I think, at the beginning of the show.
The boys don't age because they're clones that keep dying.
But once we're on the Omega clones, they do age. They finish high school and go to college. Dean does anyway. But
they both technically got their degrees.
Yeah.
Dean goes to college. Hank just does whatever he wants. He becomes a pizza boy, and then he just whatever's available. He's just like, yeah, I'll go do that.
But the passage of time, I think, is so important, and so it's one of those things that's like, I find frustrating about, like, if I'm going to pick a show specifically, Family Guy. I don't like characters who are there to just be the butt of every joke, right? And that's their only function. So I really don't like how the show treats, and I haven't watched Family Guy in like 10 years, but I don't like how the show treats Meg, right? And because time doesn't necessarily pass, they're never beholden to how awful they are to her, because it's next week and that stuff didn't happen, right?
Yeah, as long as like once every 30 episodes, Peter goes, yeah, I love you, Meg.
Yeah.
And they have like one moment before he throws her down the stairs again.
Right, to reestablish the status quo. That's the other thing about Venture Bro. Because there's a timeline, the status quo doesn't have to be reestablished at the end of every episode. If something crazy happens, it just happens.
They still got to figure stuff out. And I think that especially shows in seasons 6 and 7, because there's pivotal changes that occur, like the cloning facility blowing up, or Brock going off on his own to do his own thing for a while. Those are season-long arcs that have like one major change. Season 6 and 7 are very much part of the same arc, but there's smaller changes with each episode that will directly tie back to what happened on the last episode. Like there's a problem going on in the Guild of Calamitous Intent, and Dr. Mrs. the Monarch is the one who's trying to solve it, while the Monarch is the one who's secretly causing the problem, and they're constantly trying to figure this thing out and nip it in the bud.
The only other shows I can really think that do that same thing and do it well is maybe Archer, but I would argue Archer's a little long in the tooth at this point.
I think so, especially any show that does three fantasy seasons in a row.
Yeah, that's when I stopped watching Archer. I like Archer. Yeah. I love Archer. Seasons 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah. Even one has its moments that are pretty good.
One is pretty good. I take that back.
We'll rant about Archer a different time, but you are correct. And I think something that I really enjoy about the Venture Brothers being able to progress in time and watch people age a little bit is one, it adds stakes back into the narrative. People can die. People do die. And they are aware of their own mortality. And it makes things feel important again. Something like Rick and Morty is just like, yeah, Morty, I'm going over to another dimension so we can start over and I can do whatever I want.
I've got 18 clones of myself in my basement and nobody's really bothered by that.
Yeah, nothing really matters at that point. There's no story that can really have a giant impact when you essentially have a god as a protagonist.
And again, we're sticking to this passage of time thing is because I think it's so important, because there's a passage of time and these characters have to keep going and live with the consequences of what happened in the past. They can't stop. You can't just, we talked earlier about adult cartoons tending to be extremely cynical.
Yeah.
Venture Bros can't just say the world sucks and then be done with it, because the world sucks and these characters have to find out how to live in it, right? They have to find motivation. They have to keep themselves moving forward.
Yeah. And they have to be like, all right, well, nobody else is going to fix this. I guess it's up to me. The coolest thing is that despite the fact that Rusty is a loser, he's a realist. He is willing to get down in the dirt and just be like, all right, you're making me put the big boy pants on. I'm going to have to solve this problem, because when you live in a world full of people that never really grow up, even if you're an absolute dork, if you're an adult, you're the one that's going to at least attempt to fix the problems. Again, copying Steak Bentley here because I don't think anybody can put it better than he did. But Rusty is the adult in a world full of children, not just his own children, but the people that never grew up and played superhero in the OSI and the Guild. And to his dad, it was all a game and that he was the king of Shit Mountain, but Rusty can't be the king of anything. So he's just like, all right, everybody back in the car. We're done with Disneyland. We're done here. You couldn't play by the rules. Let's get this thing figured out.
Dan Harmon, and say what you will about Dan Harmon, and you probably should, but he did say at one point, comedy is one of two things. It's crazy people in a normal world or normal people in a crazy world. And Rusty is that normal person stuck in an absolutely insane, bonkers world. And he just kind of has to do his best to manage what he's given. And it makes good fucking television, bro.
It's funny that it was for a while that it seemed like Brock would also be one of the adults. And in some ways he is sometimes. He is most of the time when he's around Doc and he's like above somebody. He can be an adult, but when he's with the boys, when he's with the OSI,
Brock enjoys who he is. Like Brock goes into combat. Brock sees people shooting with AKs. He grabs a little hunting knife and he's smiling maniacally, right? Not wearing a shirt going in.
It's what he's good at. I think my favorite quote from the entire series is when he's in a dream, like a drug-based fantasy, and he's seeing his original mentor, who is essentially Hunter S. Thompson, just going, "You're a tool, boy. You can't teach a hammer to love nails, son. That dog don't hunt." I think that's just brilliant, where he's just like, all right, yeah, I am a killing machine. And when I'm with my boys from the OSI, we're all going to do some silly, super secret spy stuff. Maybe. Yeah, Sphinx. Whole nother thing there. Amazing that we decided to have our own Venture Brothers episode, and we still couldn't really focus on Shore Leave.
Yeah, there's so many characters.
It's like trying to contextualize The Simpsons in one episode.
And we also purposely avoid, usually we don't mind stepping on spoilers on this podcast, but this episode we did.
Yeah.
Because Gibby and I are sincere when we say, hey, if you're hearing this, you should go watch Venture Brothers. Season 2 and on.
You should watch it. The second reason that I just thought of with the progression of time being important to this show is that people can be petty and hold grudges. Yeah. And like, this is a world that is designed to empower pettiness.
It's true.
Like the entire origin of being a villain in this show and being part of the guild is that you can just be an asshole and get paid to do that and have this benefits.
Yeah, you really just don't like this person. It's like, I want to hench. I want to be an antagonist to this guy, and people said, "Yeah,
I'm gonna arch this guy," which is they're gonna they use arch as their moniker and their verb for like just hating somebody and wanting to be like a professional hater. It's like, it's the hater's ball from Dave Chappelle, but with laser guns and lightning rifles.
Say what you want about Dave Chappelle. You probably should.
Yeah, you probably should at this point. But he gave us some iconic moments to be like, hate.
Exactly.
And that's a really good parallel for the people in this show. I like that people can be petty and hold grudges because that's realistic. You don't even remember sometimes why you don't like a person, but it's really funny outside of your mind for other people to laugh and go like, what do you have against that guy? Where did this even come from? I
love to hate him, but like, why?
Sometimes it can just be like, he stole my sandwich from the damn work fridge. Do you know how frustrating that is? And because of that, for every day the last 12 years, I've tried to burn his house down. They've created a structure for people to never grow up. And 30 years ago, we can watch grudges play out for 30 years in this show.
Dude.
Yeah.
With the Ventures and Phantom Limb's family.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Phantom Limb, probably the most competent villain in the Guild of Calamitous Intent.
Dr. Mrs. the Monarch?
Dr. Mrs. the Monarch and Phantom Limb are on equal footing, I would say. I don't.
Maybe
they're both.
Maybe pre-arching Dr. Venture, Phantom Limb. We're getting into stuff. But final thoughts, Gibby.
Final thoughts. I like a show that can be petty, but also a show that can care about each other. Yeah. And it's really awesome to me that there's a lot of relationships in this show that go from being petty to caring about each other. And I think that's really neat. This is a show designed for people who love nerdy shit without falling into many of the tropes of nerdy shit. This is, if you've ever loved a comic book, this is a show for you. If you've ever loved like a show that parodies all of the workplace aggression that we all deal with in our jobs, this is a show for you. And if you just like a show with incredibly quick and snappy writing, this is really a show for you. And I guess I don't have a lot more to say than Sphinx.
For me, last words. Dr. Mrs. the Monarch is number one waifu for Laifu.
Oh, 100%. Sheila is the queen.
Outside of that,
just wait till they start watching this show and everybody's just gonna be like, what the fuck?
What are you into?
But I'm with you there.
But yeah, man, it's good television. For me, it very, very much so jumbles around in like my top 3 favorite TV shows ever. We've said it all already, but great character development, great world, amazing comedy, no wasted movement. It's 100% worth your time. And it's like maybe in its entirety 40 or 50 episodes. I think it's 61 episodes, counting the holiday specials. You can watch it in a couple
You're not
days.
going to believe this. It's 81.
81. Wow, really? Golly.
I know. I thought it was a lot short. Time flies when you're having fun.
True. So you can watch it in a few months, right? Watch an episode a day. Watch an episode a week.
You're going to be like me, how I was in like freshman year of college and just watch all 5 seasons. Like,
but now there are 8.
A 3-day break. True that.
It's 100% worth it. But that's been this episode of the Liberal Artists Podcast, 2023 edition. We're in here.
Oh, God, we're here.
Season 2. Let's do it.
We'll have our gal pal Kaylie back when she returns from the shadow dimension, otherwise known
Germany?
as Europe. From the 9th dimension beyond space and time, Europe.
Join us next time when we build a machine to kick the ass of, I don't know, Brian from accounting. He looked at me wrong one day.
Behold the Brian ass-kicking machine!
Peace.
The Liberal Artists Podcast premieres every other Thursday on your favorite podcasting platform. The show is hosted by Bodio Kaylie Horowitz, and Andy Gibson. You can find the show at LibArtistsPod on Instagram and Twitter. Thanks to White Hot for performing the theme song Reflect, which can be found on freebeats.io. Now, I'm off to go exploring, and maybe, just maybe, I'll find a sheep that I can call my own. Good day.
Spanakopita!
I want to say that with you, but I always end up laughing when you say it.